Saludos amigos, los invitamos a escuchar la mesa redonda de Roundtable, donde discutimos los temas del día, hablando de política, educación y otros temas locales, regionales y mundiales. Por USA la Radio.
Amigos oyentes de USA la Radio, están escuchando la mesa redonda de Roundtable desde la ciudad del amor fraternal, the city of brotherly love. Les habla Fernando Méndez, Dani Ramos, controlando la máquina digital. Noticias de COVID, como siempre, noticias nacionales, internacionales. El COVID continúa creciendo, a pesar de que, las vacunas pues han sido bastante efectivas en controlar el aumento de casos a través del mundo, en Estados Unidos, en muchas partes del mundo, pues ya se redujo el número de casos, pero lo que nos informaron los científicos es que hemos alcanzado lo que llaman un plató, una meseta, un plató en donde no hay ni crecimiento ni disminución de COVID. Y bueno, pues mejor dicho, está como paralizado, está congelado el número, pues no aumenta, pero tampoco disminuye a pesar de los grandes esfuerzos, grandes avances que se han hecho para controlar el COVID. Y bueno, vamos a tener números más claros en cuanto a lo que está sucediendo, no solamente aquí en nuestra ciudad, en nuestro estado, sino por el mundo. Casos en Filadelfia. Luego vamos a hablar sobre lo que está pasando en Filadelfia con las vacunas, porque ya había quejas de que las vacunas no estaban disponibles para todo el mundo como debía hacerse, y que por lo tanto había necesidad de que el gobierno mejorara la situación para más equidad en cuanto a la distribución. Casos totales en Filadelfia, tenemos 124,000 muertes en Filadelfia, 3,240. Hubo un aumento de 6 comparado con las estadísticas anteriores. En Pensilvania, los casos totales, 970,000 y muertes 24,749. Esto es el estado de Pensilvania. No es un estado tan seriamente afectado como, digamos, Nueva York o Texas o California, pero pues claro, el gobierno de Pensilvania no está contento con esos números, tampoco está contento el alcalde de Filadelfia, que también está tratando de lidiar con las quejas en cuanto a distribución. Y hoy vamos a hablar sobre un segmento de las noticias que es más positivo. Casos totales en Estados Unidos, 29,6 millones, muertes 539,000. Un aumento de 1,177 con respecto a los números anteriores. Y a través del mundo, 121 millones y 2,680,000 casos de muertes. Pero ahora, de todos esos millones de casos, 121,000 millones, 68 millones 800,000 se han mejorado, se han recuperado de la enfermedad. Así que es posible recuperarse del COVID, es posible sobrevivir, es posible, pero tiene que usted hacer todo lo necesario para protegerse, para proteger a su familia, a sus amigos, a la gente que usted, con quienes usted viene en contacto. Muy importante. Ahora, en cuanto a Filadelfia, recordemos que en estos últimos días la gente estaba quejando de que, primero que todo, que no había paridad en los números, en la distribución de las vacunas. Más gente blanca en muchos barrios, en una mayoría de negros, había más vacunas para blancos que para negros. Bueno, eso está el Estado corrigiendo con un método que puede dar bastantes buenos resultados, que es hacer que estas vacunas, que está pasando aquí en Filadelfia, estén disponibles para todo el mundo, sin necesidad de tener recomendación de un médico, sin necesidad de hacer una reservación por adelantado, etcétera. Así que si usted puede ir aquí en Filadelfia, puede ir al centro de convenciones, está abierto para todo el mundo, no importa quién sea, no importa si no ha recibido la vacuna, usted puede estar allí. Porque está aumentando, los casos están aumentando, 17 estados y el District of Columbia han visto aumentos en COVID en las últimas 2 semanas. Otra cosa que sigue preocupando a los científicos son las diferentes versiones del COVID. Hay un COVID P1, que es una versión que apareció en Brasil primero, y ahora hay casos en el Reino Unido. En Gran Bretaña hay casos de la variante del Brasil, el P1. Y hay bastantes preocupaciones. En Estados Unidos también hay un Kent, en el Reino Unido, perdón, hay una variante, se llama Kent. También se conoce como BT17 o B117, perdón. Y está dominando en Gran Bretaña, se ha esparcido por todas partes en más de 50 condados y aparentemente está cambiando nuevamente. Y hay una variante de Sudáfrica. Ahora, ¿por qué nos interesa esto? Porque esas variantes son las que ya han identificado, que pueden nombrar, que pueden enumerar. Pero los científicos nos dicen que puede haber miles de variantes a medida que viaja el virus. Entonces se hace importantísimo que para combatir el virus, todo el mundo debe participar con las vacunas, primero que todo, con las medidas que ya han sido ampliamente publicadas en cuanto a evitar contacto con un gran número de gente, taparse la cara con las mascarillas, lavarse las manos frecuentemente, etcétera, etcétera. Ya sabemos esas recomendaciones que nos han dado frecuentemente los médicos y las agencias de salud. Bueno, eso hay que continuar haciéndolo a pesar de que algunos de nosotros, muchos de nosotros, en este caso, más de 30 millones de ciudadanos americanos han sido vacunados. Pero hay que continuar practicando estos métodos para prevenir la infección. It's not expected that new variants will have developed that these are making copies of themselves so they can thrive and spread themselves. Those variants that we're talking about, and that's what the preoccupation, the worries are in Great Britain and in many other countries. There are 17 states and Washington, D.C. that have seen increase in COVID for the last 2 weeks. And COVID is spreading in variants. And we're mentioning the Brazil variant has been found in England. That variant has been identified as P1. And there are other variants in Great Britain, one of them also known as the Kent variant, and the South African variant have been identified, have been found in 20 counties in Great Britain. So this is what we have to keep in mind, because the object here is not to create panic, to worry people unnecessarily. What we want to do is to clarify some of the information that you see, that you receive, because we have so many sources of information nowadays. If you have a cell phone, if you have access to the internet, you're going to see a lot of information that may not be accurate, or that is not complete. So we're trying to be cautious in terms of what it is that we see and what we understand about COVID. It is not expected that the new variants have developed. All viruses mutate as they make copies of themselves to spread and thrive. Most of these differences are inconsequential. Okay, so listen to that. This is from a scientific point of view. It's not made up. It's not Trump news. Most of the differences in the variants from one version of COVID to the next, most of those variants are inconsequential. A few can even be harmful to the virus's survival. So some of those changes actually could be of benefit to us if they kill other versions of the virus. But some can make it more infectious and threatening, and they are the ones that are being identified as dangerous. The P1 from Brazil and the South African version, which has mutated, has invaded many of the states in the United States. As with the original version, the risk is highest for people who are elderly or have significant underlying health conditions. We should keep in mind that if you have health conditions that are already of concern to your doctors, then to be exposed to the virus makes it even more difficult for you as a person to deal with this. We were listening earlier to conversations with a doctor, Dr. Tom Frieden, who was talking about the vaccines, and who actually his approach, his conversation was one of positive outcomes, but he's one who says the vaccines are already working to save thousands of lives. And we have seen, according to the Washington Post, one of those focus group in which this Dr. Frieden participated says, he was told by them, we meant to be educated, not indoctrinated. So this doctor was talking, this Dr. Tom Frieden was talking to a group of people, Trumpists, who opposed the vaccine. And so he was trying to give them the right information, trying to convince them that they place their lives at tremendous risk by not following the recommendations of doctors. So that's an important thing. For this doctor, he's saying that they don't want to be preached at. They don't want to be told that this is a political thing, that this is fake news. They don't want to be told any of that. They want to be convinced that they need to be vaccinated. And this Dr. Tom Frieden is in agreement with that. He says that the proper approach to these people is to convince them of the need to get the vaccine. So we'll have a little bit more on COVID, consequences and the increase and the vaccines on the other side of a brief interruption here in Usa la Media, the Roundtable. Les habla Fernando Méndez, Dani Ramos, controlando la máquina digital. Regresamos en un momento.
Saludos amigos, los invitamos a escuchar La Mesa Redonda, The Roundtable, donde discutimos los temas del día, hablando de política, educación y otros temas, locales, regionales y mundiales, por USA la Radio.
Señores oyentes de USA la Radio, estamos aquí de nuevo con su programa La Mesa Redonda de Roundtable desde el corazón de la ciudad del amor fraternal, the city of brotherly love. Les habla Fernando Méndez, Dani Ramos, controlando la máquina digital. Estamos hablando sobre COVID, buenas noticias, malas noticias, avances de la ciencia en cuanto a combatir este virus, avances en el modo como se distribuye la fabricación de las drogas, la distribución, etc. Otra vez repetimos, en Filadelfia están tomando medidas para que quien quiera pueda obtener la vacuna. Está ahorita FEMA manejando el centro de convenciones. La ciudad ha decidido que para que haya más paridad en la distribución de la vacuna, que muchas gentes que no tienen acceso a médicos o a ningún otro modo de obtener la vacuna, que pueden ir al centro de convenciones. No hace falta nada más que decir que usted quiere la vacuna y listo. Así que, so again, Philadelphia is opening the whole process of vaccination. FEMA is handling the vaccinations at the Convention Center in Philadelphia, the Pennsylvania Convention Center on Broad Street. If you want your vaccination, you can go now. And you don't need a reservation, you don't need recommendations from a doctor. Anybody who wants the vaccine and needs the vaccine can go there. That's good news. That's excellent news for our city. So, Dr. Fauci said, this is good news, that high schoolers could be vaccinated this fall. So that's great news. But I suspect that the vaccine will be available, abundantly available, long before the fall. The president announced that anybody who wants to be vaccinated by the end of May or June can be vaccinated. I think by July, the vaccine could be available to everybody, which means a lot earlier than the fall. Dr. Fauci is being cautious. He has been a voice of reason throughout this crisis. At some point in the future, somebody will recognize his incredible service to the nation in this moment of crisis. In the meantime, he's just a workhorse. He's working every day and in so many ways, giving the right information, giving us hope without hype, and that's important. He's not seeking credit. He's not necessarily seeking recognition for this. As I said, some future time somebody will recognize what he has done, but in the meantime, he's not about that. I was reading a segment about the Philly suburbs that will get a regional vaccine clinic, according to the Wolf administration. But it is unclear how many people can be vaccinated. Again, it comes the issue of inventory. we have enough vaccines, and that has been one of the concerns, that there is not enough an inventory large enough to give to everybody. And you know, some people are rightly concerned that this is not being done properly. Nevertheless, I insist, the news are overall positive. And so, after leaders in the Philadelphia suburbs have uh, warned this week that it could take 3 to 5 months to inoculate everyone in the top priority 1A group who wants a shot, Pennsylvania officials on Tuesday assured Bucks, Montgomery, Delaware, and Chester counties that the area is primed to secure one of the state's regional vaccine sites and could see a boost in doses in as soon as 2 weeks. Acting Health Secretary Allison Beam said as much in a 3-page letter to southeastern Pennsylvania leaders and lawmakers, in which she defended her department against criticism that it was not being transparent with its vaccine allocation data and that it has not distributed shots equitably to the state's most populated region. The suburbs regional site will be able to vaccinate high volumes of residents soon after the state's weekly shipments of Johnson & Johnson one-shot doses start arriving around March 28th. So mark that date, after March 28th. There will be more vaccines available, and that's for the suburbs. And so overall, between the increase of vaccines availability in the suburbs and availability in Philadelphia to anyone who needs it, I think in general we are looking at this as positive news, as opposed to the really bad news that they have, the headlines that we see sometimes, the negative news. Even today, the Philadelphia Inquirer has a headline: Philly suburbs can't inoculate everyone in Group 1A by May 21st unless they get a lot more vaccine. Well, that's what the news is also on the other side. The people, the authorities, the people who know are saying that there will be more vaccines available. So do not be discouraged. If you are one of those people, if you are in this part of Pennsylvania where people are saying there are not enough vaccines, perhaps there's a little bit of good news, and you can be less concerned about this. And I repeat, Philadelphia right now is poised to make the vaccine available to anyone, everybody who wants it. So what we read was that the Philadelphia Inquirer says that the Philadelphia suburbs are prepared to meet the state's March 28th deadline to schedule COVID vaccinations for all eligible residents who want one. But it says the report says it may be months before the shots are actually getting to the arms of the county's most vulnerable residents. According to a report on Monday, Chester County expects it will take as long as 3 months to vaccinate all their residents in phase 1, which includes people 65 and older and adults with high-risk conditions, while Montgomery County anticipates it could take up to 5 months. And these estimates, county officials say, do not allow for any appointments by people in lower priority groups. So, in the next few days, we here at Usala Media, this program, will endeavor to clarify which is true, because we have news from the authorities in the state saying one thing, that the vaccines will be available, that there is plenty of vaccine available, etc. And then we have other people saying that there's not enough. That the report from the Philadelphia Inquirer that's reporting 3 months to 5 months, even for people in the 1A group. Well, that cannot be. That cannot happen. If the inventory is increasing, if the numbers are anywhere near what President Biden has said, what other people concerned with this issue have mentioned, um, the vaccine would not be so tough to get, so difficult to get, that it would take 3 to 5 months, even for people in great need. It doesn't make any sense. I think they are the ones at the top of the list, and they are the ones who should receive it immediately. Um, yeah, especially people 65 and older. They are a very vulnerable population, and there are news from around the world about some people who have been careless with this and who have ignored recommendations, who are now becoming victims of the virus. The there are Holocaust deniers, and there are deniers, and there are also vaccine deniers. There are also COVID deniers. We had one in the White House, but he's now resting peacefully in Mar-a-Lago, not concerned about having to lie to the country every day. Now he only lies when he appears in public. There are other headlines that are worrisome besides the vaccine. So why address them on the other side of a brief post later. About Atlanta, about the shootings in Atlanta. It's a suspect already charged with the murder of 8 people. And the excuse, the explanation is really weird. And it's one of those crimes committed by people who are not well in the head. Crimes committed by people who are mentally ill, because there's no other way to explain horrendous crimes like this. We don't know too much yet, but the investigation obviously is in process right now to find out what really happened with this the killings in Atlanta. The virus has attacked the whole world, and the fact that there were so many people, so many leaders around the world who were determined to deny, like President Trump, to deny the seriousness of the virus. Let's remember that it was March a year ago when Mr. Trump was saying that there was no concern that his government was dealing with this and that the virus will go away by April. And he had just given an interview, a telephone interview, to Bob Woodward to tell him that he thought the virus was deadly, but that he did not want the population to panic. He didn't want us to know how serious it was. Well, he was not alone. As we're finding out, Bolsonaro in Brazil, another insane leader. Brazilians deserve better than this imbecile who's running things over there. Mr. Bolsonaro called them crybabies, told them to stop whining. Brazilians, as thousands upon thousands continue to die from COVID, and he has not taken the necessary measures to control the spread of the virus, because he says it doesn't do what it says, what the scientists tell us it does. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and not only from Brazil, but also another denier in Africa. So we're going to take a brief pause here en Usa la Media de Roundtable. Les habla Fernando Méndez, Dani Ramos controlando la máquina digital. No se vayan, regresamos en un momento.
Saludos amigos, los invitamos a escuchar La Mesa Redonda, The Roundtable, donde discutimos los temas del día, hablando de política, educación y otros temas, locales, regionales y mundiales, por USA la Radio.
Señores oyentes de USA la Media, USA la Radio, estamos aquí en La Mesa Redonda, The Roundtable, el corazón, la ciudad del amor fraternal, from the city of brotherly love. Les habla Fernando Méndez, Dani Ramos controlando la máquina digital. Well, I was speaking about the stupidity and the ignorance of some leaders. We're not alone in just having gone through 4 years of somebody who did not belong in that office. But as I said, he was not alone. There were people all over the world, similar people in similar positions of leadership who could have been of great service to their people, and they chose not to. So we had the case of Bolsonaro in Brazil. We already mentioned that. Mr. Bolsonaro said told his people to stop whining about this. And now, as a result, this is a headline of today. This is one of the headlines from Brazil. Brazil's health service in worst crisis in its history. Brazil is experiencing a historic collapse of its health service as intensive care units in hospitals run out of capacity. Its leading health institute, Fiocruz, has warned. COVID-19 units in all but 2 of Brazil's 27 states are at or above 80% capacity. Well, this guy says there is no COVID crisis. Bolsonaro says there is no COVID crisis. In 27 states of Brazil, 80% capacity. So it's a crisis that is just waiting to become one of those major humanitarian crises that will require help from all over the world. The warning came as the county registered its highest, the country registered its highest daily death toll yet, with 2,841 dying within 24 hours. So look at that, almost 3,000 people within 24 hours in Brazil, a place where the president says, stop complaining, stop whining. And that is a huge jump from the previous number of 2,286 on March 10th. So just a week later, from March 10th, it has gone from 2,280 to 2,841. So, what to do about that? I mean, Brazilians, I don't know, when they have an election, I don't know how they can get rid of this guy. We got lucky. We got lucky and we got smart. Or both. We got rid of this ignorant president, and we got somebody who took the reins after January 20th, and here we are. We're not out of the woods yet, but we are on the way to a more sane, more common sense approach to dealing with this crisis. It may take us longer than expected. Maybe the projections are too optimistic, but anyway, it's all positive. We seem to be on the road to recovery. And add to that the fact that this bill that was just approved, 1.9 trillion, contains help for the states, for the cities to deal with COVID. So that's a very positive development. I don't know. I wish Brazilians would get equally lucky or smart and get rid of Mr. Bolsonaro, but I don't know. That's not going to happen. At least I haven't heard anything about Brazilian elections. And a cautionary tale, because it's not, you cannot wish COVID away, as Trump tried to do, that it will go away like magic. Cautionary tale was the president of Tanzania, John Magufuli, and he just died at the age of 61 after weeks of COVID rumors. Tanzania's president, John Magufuli, has died at age 61, the country's vice president has announced. He died on Wednesday from heart complications at a hospital in Dar es Salaam, capital. This is the vice president, Suluhu Hassan, said in an address on state television. Mr. Magufuli had not been seen in public for more than 2 weeks, and rumors that have been circulating about his health. Opposition politicians said last week that he had contracted COVID-19, but this has not been confirmed. Mr. Magufuli was one of Africa's most prominent COVID skeptics and called for prayers and herbal-infused steam therapy to counter the virus. Now that sounds familiar. We didn't get the herbal steam suggestion. We got worse than that. We got inject Lysol in your veins. We got a light, some strange light, magical light that Mr. Trump thought would kill the virus. And we already saw reports of Dr. Burks, who can be seen on camera, very uncomfortable, wringing her hands while Mr. Trump spews these idiocies, saying that that COVID would go away by April, and that we should inject Lysol. Well, this is Mr. Magufuli apparently was following in Trump's footsteps, saying that prayers and herbal infused steam therapy would counter the virus. I don't think even the Pope has called for prayers for the victims of COVID, but I don't think by any means he would suggest that some herbal tea and some and prayers would do away with COVID-19. So finally, the vice president said, "It is with deep regret that I inform you that today we lost our brave leader, the president of the Republic of Tanzania, John Pombe Magufuli," Vice President Hassan said in her announcement. She said there will be 14 days of national mourning, fly at half staff according to Tanzania's constitution. Ms. Hassan will be sworn in as the new president within 24 hours and should serve the remainder of Mr. Magufuli's 5-year term, which he began last year, so she has 4 years in office. Mr. Magufuli was last seen in public on 27th of February. Prime Minister Kassim Majaliwa insisted that last week the president was in good health and working hard. Somehow that reminds me of the White House doctor who examined the president and said that he was in best shape of any president in U.S. history. Well, anyway, the report of that doctor, I remember everybody in the media knew, was not written by the doctor, so he can be forgiven for that. The report about the president's condition was dictated by the dictator himself, by Trump himself, saying, declaring him to be a Superman. Well, we know Superman contracted the virus, and he had to be taken to the hospital. But here we are, this prime minister denying that the president was in ill health. And he says he was healthy and working hard. Well, while Mr. Magufuli was in the hospital and in the throes of death. And the prime minister blamed the rumors of the president's ill health on hateful Tanzanians living abroad. Well, Trump blamed all the false rumors in this country on Democrats and the media. Remember, we were the enemies of the people. But the opposition leader, Tundu Lissu, told the BBC that his sources had told him Mr. Magufuli was being treated in hospital for COVID in Kenya. So, even COVID-19 deniers can die. This is my comment about this. Even those people who deny can be victims of COVID. It cannot go away just because you wish it to go away. It will not go away like magic. Tea and prayers will not do away with the virus. We don't want to discourage you from praying if you wish, especially praying for people that have departed, for people who are ill in the hospital. The Pope will say something about the power of prayers. He would never say that they're a substitute for science. And it comes, this whole thing about this president of Tanzania dying, just be in mind of that sort of thing. So can you imagine the rumors that would be running around this country? The conspiracy nuts. If Trump had died while in office as a result of COVID, we know he contracted COVID, but he was quickly treated at the best hospital in the world. But can you imagine the rumors of the conspiracy nuts in this country? They would immediately attribute Trump's demise to a conspiracy by any number of people in the deep state, beginning with Joe Biden, Clinton's CIA, even China or Iran, or even one of the many women that Trump had disrespected and perhaps abused sexually throughout his life. So he would have been canonized. His tomb would have become a place of pilgrimage where QAnon, Proud Boys, Oath Takers, and all the other worshippers of Trump would gather to honor their hero. So it's a reason for celebration that he survived. And every day, even though we try to change the news and to look towards the future, we cannot help but meditate on 4 years that we just went through. 4 years of constant concern about the leadership of our country, about the direction of our country. More isolated, country denying that there is global warming, denying that there is a health crisis that is affecting the whole world, denying that there are serious consequences for this country and for the world, creating more poverty, creating more people seeking another place to live, creating tremendous crisis for migrants in Europe, In the meantime, the crisis has arrived here, and that's one of the things that the Biden administration has to deal with. We'll talk about that. The other side of a brief pause here en Usa la Media. Les habla Fernando Méndez, Dani Ramos, controlando la máquina digital. Regresamos en un momento.
Saludos amigos, los invitamos a escuchar la mesa redonda de Roundtable, donde discutimos los temas del día, hablando de política, educación y otros temas, locales, regionales y mundiales, por USA la Radio.
Señoras y señores de USA la Radio, estamos aquí de nuevo con su programa La Mesa Redonda de Roundtable, desde el corazón de la ciudad del amor fraternal. Les habla Fernando Méndez, Dani Ramos controlando la máquina digital. Well, there are other news besides the COVID, but this is also international news. Bolivia. Now, this is what should happen to leaders who commit crimes. Fujimori, remember Fujimori in Peru? Chile could never actually get a hold of Pinochet. He was hiding in England. Eventually he was just old enough to die from old age. But he should have been prosecuted for his sins, his transgressions in Chile. But some of these guys have escaped somehow. But now Bolivia, interim president Janine Áñez arrested over a coup. The former interim president of Bolivia, Janine Áñez, and several ex-ministers have been arrested. Okay, that should have echoes here. I don't know. Prosecutors say she and the minister took part in a coup against then President Evo Morales in 2019. Mr. Morales resigned and fled Bolivia after the chief of the army urged him to step down amid protests over allegations of vote rigging. Ms. Áñez has said she is the victim of political vendetta by Mr. Morales' mass socialist party. The party won a landslide victory in presidential and congressional elections in October last year, paving the way for Mr. Morales to return to Bolivia from Argentina and take over the leadership of the mass party. His colleague, Luis Arce, was elected president, though Mr. Arce stressed in a BBC interview last year that he would pursue his own political path, saying he was not Evo Morales. He was not a repetition of Morales' failed policies. Well, what this made me think was immediately about what should happen to Trump and his minions. Because, again, even though we are attempting to move forward, this has left such a tremendous mark on the national conscience. 4 years of Trump, 4 years of guilt, 4 years of guilt by Americans over what we were doing to the environment, to human rights, to immigrants, to families separated at the border. 4 years of constant concern over failed policies, inhumane policies, illegal actions. And we were not protected in any way because Mr. Trump put in place, brought to his government, Bill Barr at the Justice Department, gave free rein to a person who hated immigrants, Steve Miller, to decide on the policies at the border. So that's what happened. Children were separated from their families. And At least now we have in charge of the Homeland Security Department, we have a man who has a heart. We have a man there who feels that what was done before was wrong. What was done to immigrants was wrong. There are two votes in Congress, two bills today that are that require immigration changes. In the meantime, there is a new intelligence report delivered to Congress by the Biden administration, warning about the rising threat of militias and white supremacists, adding urgency to calls for more resources to fight the growing problem of homegrown extremists in the United States. And there's a report from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, the ODNI. Domestic violence extremism poses a heightened threat in 2021. So we should be worried about that because, okay, how come of the thousands of people who invaded the Capitol, only, I don't know, 300 have been arrested or were arrested. A few of them were arrested. A few are being prosecuted. And in the meantime, Proud Boys, oath takers, QAnon, conspiracy mongers are still going around, still spewing their lies. Why? And now we have the president, the former president, being supported by these people. He's still popular. He's still popular. Well, he did receive more than 70 million votes. And those votes, those millions of votes are not going to disappear overnight. And there is a hard core. There is a hard core of believers who will never think, who will never agree that Mr. Trump lost the election. They will never agree to that. And they will always hold Biden as an illegal occupier of that seat. And the truth is the opposite. There's one person who did not belong in high office. There's one person who was eminently not qualified to be president. So I know that people don't like the comparison, but that's how one of the smartest societies on earth voted for Adolf Hitler. And here we are, well-educated people voting for somebody who did not belong there. A reality show host, a man who lied constantly, a man who paid women he harassed sexually, pay them to keep quiet, and a man who has been supported by Mitch McConnell, who's still in the Senate, still campaigning against common sense policies from the new administration. And so the Republicans, led by McConnell, led by McCarthy, are opposing every piece of legislation geared to improving the lives of Americans. That's where we are today. That's a result of what we did to vote Trump out of office. We are suffering the consequences of not having a big majority in the Senate, so that Mitch McConnell still has the powerful voice. Let's keep that in mind for the next election. Bueno, señores oyentes, hemos llegado al final de esta edición de la Mesa Redonda de Roundtable. Les habló Fernando Méndez, Dani Ramos, controlando la máquina digital. Los esperamos hasta la próxima.
Saludos amigos, los invitamos a escuchar la Mesa Redonda de Roundtable, donde discutimos los temas del día, hablando de política, educación y otros temas locales, regionales y mundiales, por USA la Radio.